Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Curb Cutouts podcast. This is going to be episode 1, the Curb Cut Effect. That's what we're going to call this one. So let's go ahead and I guess dive right in. So all of us had a chance to go through and read about the curb cutouts and how it all started and where it started. And we just wanted to kind of have a little discussion about it and just kind of, have a little roundtable discussion. So, does anybody have any starts that wants to start with this about the curb cutouts?
Sure. Let's start out with what the curb cutout effect is. Is that the curb cut effect is the idea that something for disabled people, it helps everyone. It helps the whole community. The idea when the curb cutouts come out were supposed to be only for disabled people, but the idea is it helped people on strollers, old people that don't need to step down on a curb, people with walkers, people with, did I say strollers, and delivery people, and all that kind of thing. So it's well designed. It's designed that helps everyone, not just disabled people. But yet we are the ones that fought for it during the ADA kind of thing.
I think we should talk about kind of, Ed Roberts a little bit.
Okay.
Talk about him and his experience at, UC Berkeley. So,
well, personally, I think it's. I don't know what they went exactly through since then, and comparing to today. I mean, I came to United States, and I think things has already been established. My curve cut, and I'm very thankful for those people who sacrifice their time and efforts to make this possible today. But the curve cut is everybody have his own curve cut based on his need, I told you when I came to United States, I really enjoy the accessibility it was provided, and my curve cut is not just for accessibility, it's the barrier, the language, immigrations, deportations, those are work. Those are come, along with disability as well.
but have you, I guess, had any personal experience with running around in your manual chair, like say downtown Portland, and coming to an area where there is not like the sidewalk just ends and there's no way to cross the street and you're having to go like an extra block, like up the street in order to cross the street? Have you had that kind of experience at all?
Not really. When in downtown Portland.
Okay.
With my being paraplegic, I was able to go a couple of steps on my wheelchair.
Okay.
The only things, stops me is going upstairs, and you cannot find a ramp. You have to go all around the buildings to get from behind scene, in the background from the kitchen. Sometimes, you have to go from the kitchen. I think this is like maybe some of it humiliation to go back from the back doors to the front, and not just at downtown Portland. Even when you go visit friends, they don't. Able body, they can enter from the front house, and you have to go from the back house, and this is like less respect, stuff like that.
Like, oh, here, the disabled entrance, it's in the back. It's off to the side. Come on in.
Yes.
You have a fresh warm table waiting for you. You see, like, going through the kitchen, waving at all the chefs.
Downtown curb cutouts are they cheapened out and they made it one cutout on the corner. So you have to use one cutout. So you have to zigzag every time, even though it's accessible there. It's on a corner. So you have to go out actually almost into the, the opposite lane to go across. If you're going like north or south, you have to go kind of in the middle. It's at a 45. It's on the 45 degree, which seemed to be very funny way to do it. I mean, because you actually do have to go like toward the lane of traffic to go, with the lane of traffic, I guess.
With my family being involved in construction and excavation, I realized that, me being disabled, we need all the curb cuts and everything, but the cost of the curb cuts themselves are like $5,000 a piece just to pour the curbs that way. And through the markings that are required. So I think that's why they put like one at a 45-degree angle rather than
Mhm.
doing individuals. But also for someone like me that has cerebral palsy and gets nervous easy, that's very triggering for me when you're basically going out into traffic to get on the sidewalk to be safe. I would prefer a separate cutout for each angle because one cutout is just too scary.
Well, especially if
And
you have a cutout and you have to go in the middle of the street in order to get down to the next one because there's literally just one. You
yeah.
Yes.
shouldn't be
And
forced
John,
to
if
go in the
if
middle of the
they were
street.
designed, if they're designed when they put them, when they built them to start with, instead of being retrofitted, it would save a lot of money, right? I mean, because it would always be designed. That's the way they would make it. It would be put in there. My personal experience was with my clinic at Sunnyside. There was no cutout inside the loading and unloading zone. You had to go out into the lane of traffic, not out into the road, but out into the parking lane of traffic, and then around out into the weather, and then onto the sidewalk and up and around. Well, for a year, I petitioned to get it to get a curb cutout put in there, and they did put one in. It cost them $6,000, is what they said. They split it with the clinic split it with the property owner, so 3 and 3. But they put a real nice one in, a real nice bead cutout with loading zone names and those yellow anti-slip pads that go down there too. So they did all that for them.
Domes.
What's that?
Truncated domes.
Oh, okay,
And
there we go.
Those are for the visually impaired, actually. So they
Oh, really?
Correct. Yep.
You
So
know,
people with
with
the
this-
stick can feel them, right? Be able to feel the bumps, knowing
Yep.
it's a curb there.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's definitely for the visually
Anyway.
impaired. Yeah.
As soon as they put one in, I had noticed the UPS guy was using it to bring his stuff into the building. So he just used it. You know, he didn't have to lift it up and over the, hand truck it over the curb. So
Yep.
And I
I was headed
Okay.
into town a couple days ago, and because I live out in the country, we don't even have many sidewalks out my way. But I was going into town the other day. There was a landscape truck sitting half on the curb and half in the bike lane. I'm sure he used one of the curb cuts to get his truck halfway on the curb.
to drive up on the curb, huh?
Yep.
Well, and I have a feeling that most of the people that are going to be, listening to this, they typically live in an American city that they don't use a wheelchair, so they just, or unless they've dealt with like a baby stroller or anything, they're not going to sort of look at the sidewalk and then think like, oh, here's this small ramp at this intersection. It's not something they think about.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't even realize what it is. They just, a lot of people don't even know, that I've spoke with anyway. You say infrastructure, and they don't even know what that entails. I mean, it's amazing to me how standardized things come, but yet people don't realize where it came from or why it's there.
Exactly. And, if we, I know that we've all did a little bit of research about how this whole thing with infrastructure started, where did even curb cuts come from? And kind of, some of the research as far as where it kind of started in America was from an activist named Ed Roberts, who was a young disabled activist from the University of Berkeley in California, who basically over the years he let's see what so basically he had polio. He got polio, so he was in the iron lungs, basically, which is this big casing, your head sticking out, your whole body's surrounded in this big metal object that basically keeps you alive, keeps you breathing. And he was paralyzed below the neck, only being able to move only literally 2 of his fingers, and that's it. And he was able to go to school, start all these changes and stuff that now that we have been able to benefit from in current times, that we didn't really know about. So it's very interesting to learn about Ed Roberts and his story of him and what he was able to do, with basically advocacy for the disabled community. Because don't forget, when he was going to school, this was, I believe, in 1960, it's like 68, 67, somewhere around there. Or 1962, there we go, is when this all started. So this is like the early 60s. So if you think about it, we didn't have any of the ADA or any of that stuff wasn't until 1990. So this is almost, 40 to, 50 years before they even had the ADA in place, which is just mind blowing to think about for some of those people that are becoming, disabled right now, or, new to the disabled community. They're just now, a lot of them I don't feel like understand or know the history of where some of the things that we've taken, made available to us has been available. There's a story that I listened to about Ed, that you guys listened to as well, that he went out. They were called the what was the name of the group? Was everybody name of the group called? They were called the Quad Rollers.
The quad
Quad Squad or something.
The quad rolling.
Yeah, Quads Rolling, I think is what they called themselves. And they were going around at nighttime supposedly and taking sledgehammers to different places around Berkeley in the middle of the night and breaking up curbs that they thought were not, that needed to become, curb cuts so they could make it more accessible for the disabled community there in Berkeley, which is just, if you think about that, I can just imagine a bunch of people in power chairs going to somewhere with sledgehammers, breaking up sidewalks, to make sure that we can get some curb cuts. It's just quite an amazing story. Does anybody have anything to say on any of that?
If that what takes to make our life better, I'm really amazed how they pull it up, and how they told him, you should. He thought about dying or killing himself, and people should tell him you should die or kill yourself, and this is and how he bounced back, and he proved that he deserved to live.
Yeah, because in the early 60s and 90s, disabled people didn't have any rights. They were literally locked up and put into institutions and put into special places just for people with disabilities, or they just put them all in one spot. Didn't have a right to any education, jobs, any respect at all, and just public life. Like, you wouldn't see somebody in 1962 in a wheelchair roll up into a bar or a restaurant. That this didn't happen. That was very, I don't necessarily frowned upon, but this is it just wasn't the norm. You know what I mean?
And even those that had attendants at the time, the attendants were pushing them down the street and helping with the sledgehammers, and they would do most of it late at night just so they didn't cause any ruckus. They would go out at like midnight and break down curbs.
It's not like it's not just accessibility. Also, as people take advantage of you. I just read about the show that they have called Jerry Williams, who running the show, or John Williams, who tried to make money with having hosting disabled young
Jerry
kids
Lewis
on his show.
Yes, Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis, yeah.
Yep.
These people, there's a lot of people of it recently, and I can think of people, in the right now that they're doing the same thing. They're taking advantage of people with disability and running the costs for people with disability and getting funding, and nothing done.
Yeah, I
know the federal government, they provide a lot of money to have people, fix their curb. I tell you, my neighbors here, I have a sidewalk. I cannot go on the sidewalk. Even I use a manual chair. I have to go on the streets. And this is really dangerous when cars two ways up and down. Even my kids, they fell down on their bikes. And, he just put some cement and trying to fix it. But this is not the solution. They don't want to pay money to fix their curbside.
Yeah, because the property owner is responsible for all the curbs within the right-of-way of their own home. Mm-hmm. So that all falls on the property owner themselves, which is kind of a bummer. There should be a general fund for that sort of thing, I think.
Well, I was surprised to know that the city is not responsible for it, and that people who own the property are responsible to do the modifications. And this should not be the case,
And
if there's a tree on the side, or the trees are planted by the city
mhm.
on the sidewalks, and those trees are really damaging the sidewalks.
Yeah, they
So
lift them up.
why is the owner responsibility?
Yeah, it's messed up, and that's why when we have, like you guys are saying, it's based on the property owners in order to be in charge of fixing that. That's why we have it so broken up, where you have a curb cut out and then nothing, and then a curb cut and nothing, like, because there's no consistency. If it's based on the businesses having to, or the owner of that property, it's their job to do it. If there's nobody there to enforce it or push them to do it. Which it's also
Well,
the job
you know,
is the expense of it,
That's why our tax money should be invested in a way that benefit the people, the community, which is we are part of a community that the most need, or marginalized portion of marginalized community that we are really need those money to access those money to have accessibility provided in the city. Some areas in Tigard, if you come to the city of Tigard, some streets have no sidewalks at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like even where John lives is a more rural area. There's a lot. There's no sidewalks at all, none. So it just kind of depends on where you're at, each city, and if you guys kind of remember in the story about the rolling quads, they basically, where it all started for them is they went to, they ended up going to a Berkeley City Council meeting in 1971. So they rolled up in there as a gang, with their power chairs, a few able-bodied people with them. They rolled up in the city council meeting. They're like, hey, like we, need to have curb cuts on every street corner in Berkeley. Like they demanded it. And basically when they started that in 1971, that started the whole entire thing of curb cuts starting, majority, especially citywide, was like in 1971 at Berkeley, which is that's just amazing that they were able to go through and make that, happen. And they, they got it taken care of that quickly. I feel like if we were to go into a city meeting and there's like, say 6 of us, we all rolled in there right now and said, hey, we need this thing, they're going to be looking at us like, okay, like take it up with the, somebody else in the city department or somebody in that department. Like it's still possible. There is possibility for us to get curb cuts and curb cut changes. It's just a lot has changed since when this all first started and when they made it part of the ADA. That does make it the property owner's responsibility. And with the financial cost of it, as John was saying, was like anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000, John, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Especially if it's to modify something existing. I mean, a lot of those places are not going to have, one, the financial means to do it, or two, be required to do it based on if they're not serving not just the disabled community, but a community in general that would have a need for sidewalks, such as maybe it would be like families there, stuff like that. Because like as we were saying in the beginning, curb cuts are used for not just disabled people, but for a community of people. That are important.
That's why the universal standard access should be implemented for all ages, all kind of disabilities, able bodies. There's a universal setup.
A lot of times in the commercial world, they wait for big companies to come in, and then in order for them to get permits, they have to bring the area up to code, which includes the curb cuts, and this even goes for like turning lanes on the highways. I mean, the business that's moving in is responsible for the access to their business. So it makes it kind of hard. I mean, it's on the business itself. So the city's not giving any incentive to make it accessible. It's all just on the business. That's not right, I don't think. I think there should be, like you said, some tax money or something that the businesses can use to help offset the cost.
And I think a lot of the time, a lot of places still rely on the, reasonable, accommodation, saying that, oh, that's beyond it's not a reasonable accommodation because of the financial, toll it would take on that business or company or whatever it may be. Which
That's
I don't
one
know.
thing about the curb cutout effect. It actually is good design is good for everybody. So that seems to be the ideal. If they start out with the good design and they start out with the idea, like have you seen the OHSU's new entrance to their building too?
Mm-hmm.
There is no curb. It's underneath the awning, you know, so it's a drop off area, and there is no curb. They just designed it so that there would be no curb. And there's no need for a curb, really. They have like pillars that block off the area so nobody drives through the windows. But there's no need for a curb there. So I mean, with a good design, I'm sure the curb costs a lot of money to design and build and put in too. So if you put no curb, then everyone has access to it.
Well, I think universal accessibility is definitely a key there, Franklin, like you said, because it's universal for everybody. Go ahead, John.
But that's also related to the stormwater in the parking lot. A lot of storm piping is done within your sidewalks. So when your water runs down, it runs underneath your sidewalk. So you can get away with it in some cases, but not always, depending on the amount of traffic and the size of the parking lot. Because a lot of them carry water away from your parking lot.
I think it's also, it costs less time and less money to make a flat curb instead of making an up and down and stairs, building a ramp, but rather than stairs.
Yeah, but it has to be covered though. Otherwise, the water would be a problem. You have a water management problem, like John's saying. So you have to be able to drain the water away from it, and the curb will do that, right?
Yes, definitely will. So let's take a moment real quick and take a little quick pause, and we're going to do a quick little advertisement here. So we're going to do a quick little ad. We'd like to thank, the sponsor of ourselves for our very first podcast. As many of you know, we do have a hotline at 505-695-CURB, where you can actually call and tell us about your curb cutout issues you might have in your area, whether it be not accessible, whether it be improper drainage in front of it, or whether it be you have it there, but then there's no sidewalks. Whatever it is you related to curb cutouts, we want to hear about it. So please give us a call on that number. So let's go ahead and take a look at this ad real quick.
Access or lack of proper accessible curb cutouts? Call or text our complaint line today at 505-695-CURB. Operators are not standing by, but we will air the complaints weekly after each podcast. Thanks for helping us raise awareness to lack of or access to proper curb cutouts.
Okay, there we go. So there's our little ad. So go ahead. If you guys have any questions, thoughts on our ad?
I love it. Mine, talking about, how just one person started all this movement, and this expanded not just in US, expanded in Europe and in the whole world as well. So nothing is impossible. Everything can be achieved, but you need motivation and start. Yeah,
exactly. And I think in the beginning, with Ed Roberts, with him it seems shown here, and his iron lung, for him with his iron lung situation, he talked about wanting to end his life and not and then he decided just I can't
develop his own way of breathing. That's the frog style, the frog method, and he was able to prove that he can do it on his own first to be able to breathe. Yeah, and then he started his big movement.
Yeah, going to school and doing when everyone said, "Oh, he's just gonna be disabled. He won't amount to anything." And here he is. Now he ended up getting married, having kids, getting his master's degree. It's a guy that started from literally nothing, and was able to help be one of the main people to push for curb cuts. So there's an article that we really liked that we will make sure we put in the video description below for you guys to take a look at. and it was from another podcast called The 99% Invisible. So we will go ahead and put that link in the video description so you guys can go ahead and learn about Ed Roberts yourselves, and kind of learn about activist stuff that happened during the 60s. It's just a really good read, and I definitely recommend that you guys definitely take a look at it, and we'll be able to hopefully learn something really awesome about curb cutouts, and Ed Roberts is an amazing guy. So
Can you imagine, sorry, John, go ahead.
As you go through your daily life, just slowly take a look around and try to realize, where things came from and why we have what we have. Because honestly, until I started doing the research for this, I didn't realize that it was one person. I thought it was an organization or, I just thought it was a bigger push. But it ended up being 6 or 7 people that changed it all those years ago, and here we are reaping the benefits today.
yeah,
Exactly, John. You remember if you see, even without social media, look what we have today. How we can get our message across by using the social media. Back then, they really did a lot of efforts to be able to send a message from place to place. But today, we are very, very, very fortunate to have a social media on our side, and we can speak our minds and send our message and bring our voice to the table.
yeah, because they definitely did not, they didn't have that, back then. Like I said, they didn't have the social media or whatever, so they had to do a lot of word of mouth and to try to get their word out there and use their voice to make a change happen. Which, as much as we've talked about curb cut, history, and yes, there's still a problem with curb cutouts today, even though they're, really shouldn't be, but it's just, as a society, it's just kind of happened that way, that we still have intersections that are incomplete, or we'll have a curb cutout and not another one for 3 blocks, just based on who owned the property, when it got changed, because one building got built in 95, the other one got built in 2005, so they, different times, different sidewalks, who knows why our curb cuts are so different and why there's so many issues. But I have to say, at least for me here locally where I live, I've definitely seen a huge increase of them going through and removing curb cuts that were no longer, I guess, safe or up to code. Changing the angles of them, adding the bumps for those people with visual impairment, so that way they know that, hey, this is the end of the sidewalk right here. I definitely have seen a big push for that here locally, as far as them going through and changing it. But there are a lot of areas in the city too that don't have proper curb cuts at all, or none at all, or even a sidewalk at all, where I have to take my wheelchair, go in the middle of the street of a neighborhood, and hope that the cars are paying attention. Which, most people will think about, there should be sidewalks everywhere, right? No, that's not the case. And if you're, yeah, go ahead, Franklin.
Well, we're standing on giants, that's for sure, but we got to keep pushing. I mean, I think that's the only way we're going to keep the progress going, is just keep pushing, just keep their message going.
Yeah, I mean, advocacy is the most important part of the disabled community. We need to make sure that we're advocates for ourselves and, and for others, to make sure that we get, changes to continue moving forward and not be stuck with improper curb cutouts for the foreseeable future. I mean, that's the whole goal, is to raise awareness about that. Yes, there is still issue with curb cuts. Like, it's not like, that got, ADA got passed in 1990 and it's all, sugar coated and candy for now. That's not the case. We definitely still have a lot of curb cuts and a lot ways to go still with it, but yeah. So,
Well, I'd like to
go ahead.
say thank you to Ryan for putting all this together. He's worked hard to make
Thanks,
all
John.
this come to life.
It's been a fun project for us, and we're all learning. So if there's any audio issues or video issues or anything, we do apologize. We're still working out some of our details and trying to make this work. And then Franklin, do you want to take a moment and tell people about what is coming up in our second episode? We have a guest speaker right here.
We have a guest speaker. We just still have to do a little more research on it, but that will be Lily will be coming with wheelchair adventures about traveling with wheelchairs and traveling the Northwest.
Cool. That'll be good. We'll have our first guest speaker, so we're excited about that. Be able to share somebody's story with you guys. So definitely hit us up on all of our social media accounts: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and we'd love to hear from you. Give us your feedback, thoughts, maybe things you guys want to hear us talk about. We'll be glad to add that to our docket as far as upcoming subjects we want to talk about, and be able to go from there. So yeah.
I also want to thank you, Ryan, too, for all your hard work. You've done a wonderful job in a short amount of time, really.
Yeah. Thanks.
And we rib you all the time, but it's just in fun. We know we love you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, guys. It's been a whirlwind trying to get all this stuff figured out and set up, but we're getting there. So yeah, perfect.
It's a good start.
Yes, huge start. We're going in the right direction. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining me again this Saturday afternoon, and we will be seeing everybody again in about 2 weeks. All right. Take care, guys.
Hey, Curb Cutouts. My name's Danny, and I was just calling to bring awareness. I live in the Stafford area, and I've noticed that in the intersection of Eck and Stafford Road, although the curb cutouts might be fine, where they go to is like nowhere. They just go poof, like Chill Silverstein's, like where the sidewalk ends, because they do. And it just doesn't make sense to me why they don't have an extension of the sidewalk. On one side, it's completely a mud bath. You guys aren't going to wash your wheelchairs there, so I'm not fully understanding that. But maybe you guys could shed some light on that. Anyways, have a great day. Thanks for this. It's truly awesome what you guys are doing. Okay, take care.